Welcome, everyone. We're going to draw a direct, systematic comparison between two of the most consequential crises of our lifetime, the COVID-19 pandemic, which began in 2019, and the Iran war and global energy crisis unfolding right now. Today is April 29th, 2026. My thesis is simple. These two events follow the same playbook. Same spread pattern, same information suppression, same deliberate policy choices that harm ordinary people, and critically, the same economic backdrop that suggests neither crisis was entirely accidental. Over the next 10 slides, I'm going to show you the evidence. At the end, I'll ask you a question that I cannot answer for you. You'll have to decide for yourself. Look at that timeline on screen. Wuhan, December 2019, East Asia, January 2020, Europe, France, Italy. By February, the Americas. By March. By the time the WHO declared the global pandemic on March 11, 2020, the virus had already been in 114 countries. Italy went into full national lockdown on March 8th, while American officials were still telling us it was contained. Now here's the parallel I want you to hold in your mind. Oil price disruption radiates outward from the Strait of Hormuz in almost exactly the same way. Countries closest to the source feel it first, the Gulf states, then Europe and Asia Pacific. The Americas, insulated by domestic production, feel it last. But here's the crucial insight. The delay doesn't mean you're safe. It means you have less time to prepare than you think. Complacency is the virus. Complacency is the energy crisis. Every crisis has victims and victors. And like the politicians say, don't ever let a crisis go to waste. COVID was no different. On the victim side, patients without hospital beds, workers laid off overnight, small businesses lost everything, developing nations with no safety net whatsoever. On the victor side, pharmaceutical companies, big tech companies, defense contractors, banks, they all did very well. Billionaires, global wealth surge 42%. And look at the bottom of that slide. The top 10% of American earners, those making $250,000 or more, they account for nearly half of all consumer spending in this country, up from 35% in the 90s. This means the stock market can hit all-time highs while working families are drowning. The disconnect is not the bug, it is the design. Now let's talk about what we were told versus what was actually happening. The three mechanisms, three ways you were kept in the dark. First, the containment illusion. In January 2020, we were told COVID was contained. What we know now, confirmed by NIH and European medical studies, is that the virus was already circulating in France, Italy, and Spain in late 2019. The containment narrative wasn't a mistake, it was a delay, and delays cost lives. The same illusion is playing out today. We're told the energy disruption is regional, contained. Meanwhile, the Philippines and other nations, Japan, China, are rationing electricity and cutting the work week. Diesel shortages are appearing. Diesel export bans are appearing. Fertilizer prices are climbing. The transmission is already underway. But we're told here in America that everything's okay and prices will drop very soon once the conflict is ended, which is very soon, is what we're being told. Second, the distraction machine. In 2020, the media flooded us with mass debates, hydroxychloroquine arguments and political blame, while trillion-dollar relief bills were being written behind closed doors. Today, the news cycle moves from trade war drama to election stories to the stock market and how it's hitting new all-time highs every single day. Anything to prevent a clear-eyed analysis of what a prolonged energy shock and trade crisis actually means. Third, and most important, the delayed shockwave. Here is the mechanism you need to understand. Energy costs flow into fertilizer prices. Fertilizer prices flow into production costs, food production costs. Food production costs flow into grocery prices. But there is a lag. By the time it gets to the grocery shelf and you see the price, there's usually about a 6 to 12 month lag from a disruption to consumers actually seeing an increase in prices on the shelf. We don't panic because the price tag at the grocery store hasn't changed yet, but the foundation is already cracking. Now let's talk about something harder, the ways our own leaders have made this worse on purpose. Look at this comparison table carefully. I want to walk through each row. Policy choice. In COVID, we were told to flatten the curve, accept short-term economic devastation to prevent long-term health catastrophe. Businesses closed, millions lost jobs. We were told this was necessary. In the energy crisis, the equivalent policy is sanctions and blockades, accept your own citizens' energy costs rising, accept your economy taking a hit in service of geopolitical goals. The citizens pay. The objectives are set by people who will never struggle to heat their homes or even know how much it costs to fill up their tank of gas. Origin. This is where it gets uncomfortable. This is now a congressional record from NIH Deputy Director Lawrence DeBach's own sworn testimony confirming that NIH-funded research through EcoHealth Alliance constituted gain-of-function work at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the funding went through Dr. Fauci's agency. The parallel with the Iran conflict is that it's the fog of war. We don't know exactly who we're dealing with in Iran. We don't know who the leaders are. But due to decades of U.S. foreign policy, sanctions, proxy wars, and regional military posturing created the conditions that we're dealing with now. We lit the match in both cases. Concealment, China suppressed COVID data, silenced doctors, the world lost critical weeks. Iran today conceals its true strategic calculations. They're unwilling to negotiate, and they're covering up and lying to their own people about the state of the economy there. Both actors, driven by regime survival instinct, made everyone's situation worse. And then the duration. Neither crisis was forced to end. Both were prolonged by the state actors and the failure of others to impose real costs early enough to matter. And so whenever you're telling your people it's not going to last that long, it's going to end soon, everyone gets complacent and just expects that's going to happen. And then 1 month turns into 2 months, turns into 6 months, turns into a year. Same thing with the Ukraine and Russia conflict. But why now? Why does this keep happening? Because the global economy keeps needing a reset, and crises are how resets get done. I want to dispel a myth right now. COVID did not cause the economic catastrophe that followed. COVID was the accelerant. The house was already on fire. By 2019, global corporate debt had reached 72 trillion. That's 92% of GDP, worldwide GDP. More importantly, That debt load was 50% higher than what existed during the 2008 financial crisis, the worst economic event most of us had lived through. In September 2019, 3 months before anyone heard of the word COVID, the US Federal Reserve began covertly intervening in the repo markets. The overnight repo rate spiked above 6%. That is a systemic liquidity emergency. The Fed was quietly propping up a financial system that was already under severe stress. The inverted yield curve, which historically predicts recessions, triggered a global stock sell-off in 2019. Outlook was its most pessimistic since 2008. Economists knew a recession was coming. What COVID did was provide a cover story, a legitimate external, nobody's fault justification for the reset that the over-leveraged global economy already needed. The pandemic didn't create the crisis, it legitimized one. Now let's look at what the reset has created and the three simultaneous crises it has left us with today. The Iran war and energy shock is not arriving into a healthy economy. It is arriving into an economy already buckled by three simultaneous structural failures. Let me walk you through each column. Housing. Home prices are up 60% nationwide since 2019, which is incredible to even think about. The median existing single-family home now costs over $400,000. That is 5 times the median household income. The historically affordable ratio is 3 times income. That is 5 times the median household income. We are at nearly 75% of American households cannot afford a median priced home. The national housing deficit, the gap between how many homes exist and how many are needed, stands at 4.7 million units according to Zillow. The median age of a first-time home buyer just hit 40 years old. An entire generation has been locked out of home ownership. AI energy shortage. American data centers consume 183 terawatt hours of electricity in 2024, more than 4% of total national consumption. By 2030, that figure is projected to grow up by 133%. Goldman Sachs estimates $720 billion in grid upgrades will be needed. The big 4 tech companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, spent more than $200 billion on capital expenditures in 2024 alone. America's electrical infrastructure is not built for what AI requires. Now add an energy war to that. The grid was already under pressure before a single missile was fired. AI job crises. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said it directly. Adjusted for statistical overcounting, private sector job creation is, quote, pretty close to zero. U.S. employers announced nearly 946,000 layoffs in 2025, the highest since 2020. More than 17,000 jobs were explicitly tied to AI. Amazon alone cut 14,000 middle managers. Federal government employment is down 330,000 from its peak. This is the Great Freeze. Companies growing more productive without adding workers. 3 crises, all arriving at the same moment, all compounded by an energy war that none of these systems were built to absorb. So who actually benefits from all this? Let's look at the power map. Let me be clear about what I'm doing here. I'm not claiming any of these parties caused the crisis intentionally. I'm asking a simpler, more verifiable question. Who benefits from the world that emerges from this crisis? And the answer is striking. Iran benefits from the Strait of Hormuz leverage, being able to enact a toll booth Every tanker that passes through or diverts around the strait generates diplomatic and economic power. Even a military defeat can be reframed domestically as heroic resistance, consolidating the regime's hold on power. The United States benefits from trade route redraws. Disruption through the strait accelerates investment in alternative shipping routes where American companies and allies are positioned. Europe's dependency on US LNG exports deepens. The defense industry fills weapon orders. Domestic energy production becomes more economically viable at higher global prices. Israel is arguably the primary beneficiary. Its principal adversary, Iran, faces sustained military degradation. Hezbollah supply lines from Iran are cut. The window for strikes on Iranian nuclear infrastructure opens with less international resistance. Arab normalization, the Abraham Accords model accelerates when the Arab street no longer has an Iranian military umbrella to shelter under. China benefits from the Taiwan window. Western military and diplomatic resources are stretched. It benefits from discounted Iranian oil that has been quietly purchasing through back channels, and it can position itself as a mediating power, as it did when it brokered the Saudi-Iran normalization in 2023. Russia benefits from an oil price floor. Any disruption to Gulf supply protects Russian energy revenues. Western attention diverted from Ukraine reduces the political will to sustain military aid, and Russia's own sanctions situation is normalized in a world where new sanction regimes are being imposed everywhere. Now, let me bring you to the central question, the one I cannot answer for you. Here is where I have to be honest with you about the limits of what can be proven. Option A, we are witnessing a genuine chaotic power struggle, nations pursuing their own interests in a multipolar world. The benefits I just described to Iran, to America, to Israel, to China, to Russia, are the natural result of strategic positioning, not coordination. Crises happen, winners emerge. That's geopolitics. Option B, there's a private, undisclosed architecture of understanding between the major parties, a shadow consensus, perhaps not a single meeting, perhaps not even explicit agreements, but a convergent understanding among powerful actors that the current world order must be dismantled and rebuilt, and that this crisis, like COVID before it, is the mechanism for doing so. I cannot prove option B, but I will tell you this: the evidence does not allow me to rule it out either. What the evidence does allow unambiguously is this: in both the COVID pandemic and in the Iran energy crisis, the same pattern repeats. Citizens are harmed, elites benefit, the economic reset accelerates, and those in power speak of a new normal, a phrase that now carries the full weight of everything we live through. Whether by design or by disaster, the world is being reorganized. The only question left, and it is the most important question of our generation, is whether we will have any say in what it resets to. Please follow, like, subscribe, share your comment and your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next video.